On today's episode of the Real Estate Rainmakers podcast, we're going to be going through exactly how you need to organize your subscribers, your entire database, in order to have a clear picture and know exactly what you need to be focusing on to close the most amount of deals right now and in the future. Let's get going.
Welcome to the Rainmaker Podcast, where we help business-minded real estate agents stop chasing leads and help them start attracting business. We don't claim to make winners here. We do claim that we help winners win bigger and faster. Building your business is building your database, one that works harder for you than you do for it. So if you want to get off the transaction treadmill, keep on listening. If you want the shortcut to dominating your market, then go to www.marketmakersystems.com/demo.
Let's go. Glad to be here, brother.
Yes, sir. How are you doing today, Mr. Odo?
I'm good, man. You have quite the radio voice. I just want to compliment you on that. Listen to that intro. Like, it's just wonderful. I'm glad you guys never make me do the intro. I'd probably choke.
That's time spending with Mr. Michael Reese, who is not with us here today. He again has been on the road. I got to spend the day with him and Woods yesterday in Houston, Texas, which we had an amazing event with a awesome partner in Trisha Turner down there. But it's just cool being able to be in there. You know, I don't get to go to all of those, but you know, when you get to spend time after the fact or a little bit before with agents that are asking questions, and you just get to hear what kind of their problems are and, you know, give them some little things that they can go and implement. It's just a really cool situation. But today we've been talking about all kinds of stuff in the last week since the podcast, but I've been really excited about being able to nail it down and really have some actionable takeaways for people just to be able to understand where they need to be focusing to close the most amount of deals. And, you know, I shared with you a video and send it to Michael too, because everything that we've been saying, you know, obviously we reference Kern quite a bit on this podcast. And, you know, was watching a video that was following me around, and he was talking, and I started laughing out loud. I was watching it in my bed at night, might have woke my wife up, because I was watching it and I was like, no way. Like, this is exactly what we've been talking about. So I sent it to you, and I think you probably had a similar reaction.
Yeah. And, you know, I've been doing quite a bit of deep work, you know, on this particular subject and topic within the technology side, and also, you know, getting our arms around the marketing side, not for us specifically, but for us, but also, you know, for all of the agents, and you know, trying to make kind of a formula that makes sense. And so, yeah, I watched the same thing, and like my jaw was open. I'm like, man, that's what we've been saying. So, you know, it's good when you have, you know, one of the top internet marketers in the world talking about the same thing that you're, you know, talking about on a regular basis in multiple different ways. And so I found that interesting. And what he specifically said, I mean, I'll dive right into that, was that most people, if you look at the segment of your market, and he drew out this rectangle on a board, and he drew a little line at the top, and he wrote 5%. And he said, this is now business. And this is what most people go after on the internet when, you know, they have a marketing budget. Fill out this form so I can email you and call you forever, was the joke he made. He said, then if you draw out the next segment, right? Yeah, we've all been there. The next segment is 55%. And he said, these people are 3 months away. And then the difference, whatever the math is, I guess that's 40%, is if people who are 6 months out. And he said most people focus on that 5%. And the question is, would you rather have 10% of that 5% market segment, or would you rather have 10% of that bottom two, which collectively represented, you know, 95%, which would be, you know, roughly 10%, instead of 0.5 if you focused on the top 10% of the 5 of now business. And so really resonated, hit home, pretty much what we've been talking about. As he continued down that path, he said, you know, the way to do this effectively is to think about what is going on in their particular circumstance or their process where they're looking to buy your service or goods, and try to create content that's helpful, not to sell them your product, service, or goods, but to add value so that when it comes time for them to do business, they think of you first. And, you know, when I first learned about, TV commercials and marketing, and, I loved watching Mad Men, which was crazy. I never thought I'd get into a show like that, but it was just so cool. You think about like the old, beginning of why they would market like a Campbell's soup on TV, right? These people can't buy Campbell's soup through the TV, but what they were doing was they were selling the mind of the consumer. So then when they went to the grocery store, obviously, and they looked at the shelf, they'd be like, oh yeah, I want that Campbell's soup. And it still happens to us today. I was craving something the other day. What the heck was it? And it was the funniest thing. I was like, why am I eating this? And then I realized, oh, Skittles. It was Skittles, right? Like I don't
saw
eat
somebody
Skittles.
eat one off someone's face.
Right? I'm not a
commercial.
kid. Yeah. What the heck am I doing eating Skittles? My wife's looking at me like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I don't know. I just got this weird craving. It's because they sold me in my mind. And I'm at the gas station. And I'm like, man, I want something sweet. I reached down and I grabbed the Skittles. And it's in our subconscious. And so, when I was originally learning marketing for real estate, specifically direct response marketing, how to get somebody to fill out that form, what I was taught way back when was 10% are going to be now business, which is not true. The remaining 80% are going to be follow-up business, and then 10% are going to be people you'll never get because Aunt Susie's a realtor or whatever, which we know. I mean, that there's rebuttals and sales skills that'll help overcome those type of things. But that was the number that I was trying to hit. What we know to be true is across the country, 1 to 3% is the conversion rate of internet marketing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so it's not 10%.
No,
it's not even 5%.
And the fascinating thing is, for me, it just, the more conversations I've had about it, because I became aware of it probably about 2 weeks ago, like really understanding it, but it's all about the angle and the call to action. So we've talked about that previously. Angles and call to actions. There's 1,000 different angles that you could take. There's more call to actions that you could put on there, variations of them. You rearrange one word and you have a completely different call to action. So there's a lot of variations that you can do that. But the most common in internet lead generation for real estate for the sell side is a home evaluation, which there's a lot of different angles to home.
You know what? That's been around since before the internet. I used to send out mailers that were coupons that said get a free home evaluation. And seriously, I'd be shocked that people would like keep them and give them back to me in my appointment. So, I mean, that's been a good call to action for a long time.
Exactly. And it works. And there's so many of those that will translate, that if it worked back in the day, not saying you were back in the day, Mike, but if that worked previously.
Sorry, I threw you on mute. I was texting Reese. He said he's a little under the weather. So
Yep.
Yeah.
So right. So not back in the day, just previously. I'll say that. So if it has worked previously offline, there's probably a variation that will crush online if it worked offline. And with this the sell side, obviously home value, and then on the buy side, home search are kind of the two most common ones. But if you really just the best thing that I ever learned when getting into marketing and really understanding it was the only one principle, and being able to go into their shoes and be like, okay, this is you. And you're on Facebook and you're scrolling through your news feed when you get up in the morning, or you're, sitting around watching TV at night. You're on your news feed. You see your buddies at a baseball game or whatever posting pictures. You see, your aunt posting pictures of, her kids and her grandkids or whatever it may be. And then you get to some kind of like cat video that makes you laugh. And then you see this ad that says something about a home value or a home search. So if you see a house that looks cool and is down the street from you or in another neighborhood that you've been wanting to live in someday, and you click that, there is in zero worlds that means that they are ready to buy a house, right? So the fact that you can expect them to buy a house is pretty crazy, right? Now, will you find people that are ready to buy a house now? Yes. Is it 10%? God, no, it's not 10%. No. Is it 1 to 3%? That is very accurate. But for us, being able to understand that and knowing that that's the expectation going into it, then you don't go through these highs and lows of like, the leads suck and blah, 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 blah. And I need this because you're not converting.
Yeah, and it's understanding the process. And so I want to bring it back even farther, in the day. back in the day, back in the day, right? So I would take what was called floor duty or uptime, and I would wait for the phone to ring, which was a result of either a sign being hung out in front of a listing or one of the print ads that my broker had out in the market. And what would happen is somebody would call on an ad, which means that they were all the way at the end of their buying process, right? They're down in the close stage. They're at the bottom of funnel at this point. And so now they're reaching out to agents, and they would have some questions. And it was my goal to get their name, phone number, and email address. And my pitch was either, would you like to see this home? If not, would you like me to send you other homes from the MLS that match similar criteria? And, that was a pretty easy pitch. You just had to be nice. You had to listen to them. You had to answer their questions, and you had to give them the price of the house last, right? Because you didn't want them to hang up on you. So, because they're calling 300,000, what the heck? Click. So,
Right.
what would happen from there, and I know a lot of agents still do this, and so this will resonate, is you would then fulfill the promise by sending them those homes that match their criteria, and then call them to see if they'd want to look at any of those homes. And so that's really the essence of a nurture process, right? That's nurturing analog style, right? And like I said, we would print and mail those listings back then. And so, the thing is, it's the same now. The difference is with technology, you can leverage and do it so much faster for so many more people in a way that you can build a pipeline that is as big as you want it to be or need it to be to facilitate your goals in business. And really, that's what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. And for some reason, when you were talking, what I just got into my head was like having a store that you own. And, people walk in and they have different needs, right? So some people need to see houses that are 300 to 350. Some people need to see houses that are $1 million to $1.2 million. Some people need to see houses that are like 170 to 210. You know what I mean? So there's different, but they're also at different places in the process. And if you had $10 million in the bank, and so you did not need to make a sale right now, and you just solely got compensated based off of how well your experience was for the people that came into your real estate store, if you will, then you would feel really good about standing at the front and just greeting people and saying, hey, what do you need today? What are you looking for today? And if they said, well, we're just browsing, blah, 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 we're probably about 12 months out, and you were passing them off to like some kind of assistant that was going to take care of them for the next 12 months, making sure they got everything they needed along the process, you would feel really good about every single person that walked into the store. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And let's face it, everybody loves to add value. Everybody loves to help. And especially in the real estate industry, I mean, that's kind of what gets us into it. Like, we have this need to serve and help people in a way that, ultimately gets us paid.
Right. And because people don't have systems in place, when someone walks in and says that, then they start freaking out because they know they're not going to do a good enough job following up with them, and they're just going to wander through the store and probably leave the store and go into someone else's store 12 months later, right? And it's like it feels chaotic, right? Like if someone walks in and is like, hey, I'm already pre-approved and I'm looking at these houses and I'm not working with an agent already, you would leave your post at the front door and just go with them and show them those houses. You know what I mean? But then what happens to the people that walk in after that? Like, there's got to be systems in place. And for some reason, when you were talking, I just got that visual of my head of that happening. But that's actually what happens. And if you owned a store, you would never let that happen. If you just saw people walking in and not being greeted at the door, when the most important thing that you can do is greet people and understand what they are doing at the store so you can make sure they have a good experience while they're there, then you would be freaking out that no one was at the post, at the most important post, which is, I'm going to talk to this person, determine where they're at in the process, and get them the help that they need to be able to complete the process, whether that's going to be a 12-month process, a 6-month process, a 2-week process, or a couple-month process, because they're already at the close stage, like you said. But I would feel really good if I had an unlimited amount of robots that I wasn't necessarily paying for hourly rates, being able to know that they're going to take care of the person as well as you possibly can in an automated fashion. So,
yeah.
And I think that that's what you've been, you were talking about deep work. You've been putting in a ton of deep work into that process of, okay, when someone comes in, that greeter position, that position that's really determining timing and motivation, because if you're in real estate long enough, I've seen some ads from people, or some just like blog posts that people put up to try and influence a little bit of the timing, like talking about interest rates going up, or, why to buy right now versus in a year, to try and change some people's motivations. But for the most part, you're not really going to be in a really good business of changing people's timing and motivation. It's just understanding it, right? It'd be great if you could, but it's just understanding the process and trying to put yourself in their shoes and what you would want to have as an experience in their shoes. Because if you're not ready right now, the last thing I would think is like, I had a really pleasant experience because this person talked to me and determined that I was about 7 months out or 8 months out, and then never talked to me again.
Well, and so just to piggyback off that, like what I always wanted, and last week I made that comment about, never wearing a name tag. What I always wanted was to be looked at as more of a trusted advisor. And so, I didn't want to be looked at as a salesperson that was just going to try to, be self-serving, knock them over the head. I mean, I remember there were times when I would be in a house and the people would be looking at me expecting me to, sell them all the features. And I'm like, look, that's not what I do. I find what you like, and then you determine that you want to buy it. And generally speaking, like I said in the past, I find what the wife likes, and then the wife determines, but as far as that contribution is concerned, that just continues on. When you grow a team, then the goal is to contribute to your team members and adding value to them. And no matter what level of service you get into, even what we're doing right now, that contribution desire never leaves. And so doing that in a way that is not self-serving, actually trying to help, is creating good content and does position you as an expert. And so, most of what we're talking about here is middle of funnel. Most people are good at these days at either hiring a service to get them top of funnel leads coming to them, where they're filling out a form, or buying the leads from a portal. And what we're talking about is giving them this information so they actually swim towards the boat. If you're thinking about fishing, right? Like if you got a big fish on the line and my son loves these fishing shows right now. He's 5. And so he always talks about catching the big grouper. He's like, Dad, I want to catch there ain't a grouper for thousands of miles around here. He's like, let's go over to the pond and catch that big old grouper. And I'm like, you mean catfish? No, grouper. We got to put meat on the hook. Dad. Yeah. So anyways, you watch these guys, man, to reel these suckers in is a struggle. You couldn't reel in more than one, right? You just couldn't, not by yourself. And so if you could have a way, instead of having, if you just think visually, the boat lined with fishing poles, all of them on the hook, all of them swimming towards the boat. So when they get there, you just scoop them in. That's kind of what we're talking about with content in the middle of funnel. And so we promised takeaways. And so I want to dive into that. You just let me know when you're ready.
Yes. No, I was just, when you said that, I was just thinking of Jaws and Chum in the Water.
Right.
Letting them get closer, because it makes it infinitely easier. And it's funny that you said that, because the first call I ever had was somebody that reached out because of the podcast. He said the exact same thing. He was like, I swam to your boat. Like you didn't force me into your boat. Like I started listening to it and was listening to it on a regular basis. And now we're on the phone, and I want to do exactly what you just did to me, because I want people jumping in my boat. Because I don't even know if you had a pole in the water, but I just hopped up in your boat because I wanted to be there. So, it was funny that you said that, because that was the first conversation I had with somebody from the podcast. But yes, so takeaways, right? And being able to take a look at it. And I think that for me personally, if I did not have a pipeline to look at, I would always be in panic mode, right? Like if I didn't have an idea of what everybody was at in our funnel, right? So internally, we get about 2,000 new subscribers every single month. And if I didn't know where they were at in the process and have actual stages, I would be in like a constant state of panic. And all of our salespeople at the same time would probably be in a constant state of panic too, if they were looking at their business in their day and they didn't know that they had people that are further down the process than others. So that's what I've come to realize, that most agents have a very messy database. Even the most successful ones that I've talked to have a very messy database, and they only know like how many listings they've taken and how many listings they've sold on the sell side. And
to be honest,
that's where they get tracking.
they have they have a strategy for that 1 to 3% of now business, right? They got
Correct.
speed of response team in place. They got metrics to know whether or not they're winning or losing. They have a loose game plan, on that remaining 97%. Most of it is very human element driven. And so, like I was saying, if you have somebody that's 6 months out, you have an ISA on your team, you fire or they quit your team, right? Which when you're dealing with telemarketing, there's generally a lot of turnover. 6 months from now, that call may or may not happen. If it's up to you as the individual practitioner and you're out in the field 6 months from now, that call may or may not happen. If it's up to a team member, same thing. And here's the worst part. If it does even happen and you don't get a hold of them, you just kick that can down the road. You set yourself up another follow-up call. And then how likely do you think that one is to be actually made? I mean, I'm sure there's horrific statistics around these numbers. I just never looked them up. And so what we're talking about is not completely replacing that, but supplementing it in a way that, again, gets them swimming towards your boat. And so,
and I think what you're saying is like people have, and this is just because of conversations with Michael that we've had. People have like a core sales process that's a manual process that they have. A lot of people, the most successful ones on the planet, definitely have a really good core sales process, not necessarily a really good core marketing process, which creates this giant, I can't quantify it enough for everybody, opportunity for people that if they nail that, their life may not become easier in the next 30 days, maybe not in the next 60 days, but in the next 6 months to a year, they'll start feeling how much less anxious they are and know exactly where to spend their effort and be able to look at it and be like, okay, I love where my business is at. I love it. And you might have had a low number of closings last month, but you're so excited about this month just because you have clear visibility into what your actual pipeline looks like.
Well, in the cherry on top is when you walk into an appointment or somebody comes to meet you and you can tell they've been consuming your content. I mean, how does that make you feel, Jake?
Dude, I think I called you after the first one that I had.
You did. Yeah, you were so excited.
I was just like, okay, everything that we've said works. And I've seen it. I just didn't personally experience it because I've seen our partners and stuff do it here in Dallas, where you have somebody that's never really sold a ton of houses or never even been in real estate, and just having a magazine tear sheet sent out beforehand or a video sent out beforehand completely changed the whole course of that conversation. And, Jay, I always think about Jay telling me the experience he had when he was on the radio and somebody stopping him and being like, dude, you sound exactly like you do on the radio. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But similar thing, if an agent has a podcast, like Al started one for Cleveland that is a little bit real estate, people will know that he's in real estate, but more is just about all the cool stuff that Cleveland has to offer.
Yeah. What's the name of that one? That's anybody in Cleveland hop on that sucker.
Yeah, I know.
It's called The Land. The Land, something like that. Anyway, Al looks like a gangster on that cover. Yeah, I don't know if Robert did that.
Probably.
He nailed it.
Right.
Yeah.
So getting into it, like the pipeline that you've been working at, like how is that broken down?
Yeah, absolutely. So, because here's the deal, and I wanted to talk about this book real quick. Deep Work, Cal Newport. We were talking about deep work. I feel like it's a good resource. It was a great read for me. Reese actually sent it over. The way that these things work, right? And this is another quote from Mike. The goal of marketing is to make sales superfluous or unnecessary, right? So, if you think about what we do as agents, we don't really do marketing. We do promotions, right? So we promote a house, we promote an open house, we promote ourselves. Even the fill out this form is really a promotion type marketing. And so what we looked at is most agents, they don't really have a way to have a visual understanding of where their clients are at in the process. If they do a segmentation at all, which, truth be told, I never did, I would just focus on that now business and then the rest have a hope and a dream as my strategy. They might have like A, B, C, D segmentation of their leads or a star rating segmentation of their leads. And there's really no sophistication behind it. So what we built was a pipeline that if you think of what's the best way to describe this visually, Jake?
If you think essentially it's just a a board, like let's say you had a whiteboard that you just broke up into, because I've seen a lot where people have like the sales process where it's like appointments set, appointments kept, listings taken, listings sold. You know what I mean?
Right,
Like on a
right,
whiteboard
right.
where they tape it off. And then you have
Yep.
to like erase the person's name and then write it again in the next one once they move further down the sales process.
There you
Same
go.
thing, but it's just way cooler digitally.
Yeah, and so each bucket, right? So let's say you have a piece of paper, you draw a line on the top, uh, um, what is that, horizontal, and then a line going down, right, vertical. That first bucket, right? What we did was we made that the attract bucket, and that in the attract stage, that's where they come in top of funnel, and that's where you want to speak with them, right? And so we built in campaigns for each bucket. So as you grab them, you literally like click on the tile and move it, like moving your apps on your iPhone when you've held it down and they're wiggling, right? So you just move these people through these stages. So it's a real natural way to do it. But I want to talk about the segmentation in case you don't have our product and you want to do this at home or on your own. What we did was we looked at, the stages that people are in. And so you either have a buyer or a seller if you're marketing in real estate, and they're generally going to be 12 months out, 6 months out, 3 months out. And so, in the beginning stage, we're assuming that, the goal is to speak with them. So we run a campaign to talk to them. That campaign, when they respond to it, moves them over to the bucket, which is called contact. And at that point, we're assuming 12 months out, with the goal being to speak with them so that you can get their real motivation and timing and put them in the right marketing campaign by clicking on that tile and dragging it, or by, whatever process you could do this, I guess, maybe on a spreadsheet, so that you're following up with them with the right information at the right time, based on their timing. So segment your database between buyer and seller. And if they're both, I would lead with seller campaigns, because they're either going to have to sell first, or they're going to have to sell eventually. So if you're giving them cool information on, how to be proficient in selling their home, and in that process, you're still going to build authority. You're going to build it in the right way. Everybody wants the listing more than the buy side for the most part. And so that's my advice there. And then segment them by the day, or excuse me, the timing, right, of where they're at in their process. Because, we always say buying and selling is a process. People don't just get up one day and do it. And, hopefully you got anything to add there? I feel like I'm kind of stuttering on trying to describe some helpful action steps without visual cues.
Yeah, no, that's I was just thinking if we could video this too at the same time, which if somebody does want to kind of like walk through it and see it, just reach out to us, Jake at marketmakerleads.com. If you email me, we'll be able to show you if you want to actually see it, because it's a lot easier to see, obviously. But I think the biggest for me, if somebody was trying to implement something similar, not being on the Market Maker tool, which you can do. I was just thinking about that whiteboard process that a lot of people have. And, obviously it's just like if you erased the name and wrote it in a different one, the actions that need to happen would actually just happen, rather than that triggering somebody. Because I'm thinking about, years ago in the brokerage, Kathy Sink, who did a lot of the admin stuff, would go based off of what came back, what moved on the board, and then she would trigger some actions like sending out a pre-listing packet. So when an appointment got set and was put into that appointment set, there'd be a pre-listing packet that got sent out in the mail. So there's a lot of things that can happen, but ultimately, just breaking down the process of which, when someone comes in, being able to touch base with them as soon as you have a conversation, where to put them from there. It's either now or later, or you have a bad number and then you just kick that to the curb, throw it in the trash, and then you move on your merry little way. And it's put into the situation where you have, and by the way, if you do have a wrong number or a Donald Duck and you talk to somebody, that is a lead too, by the way, because there's a chance that they will buy or sell at some point. You know what I mean?
I was going to talk about get it anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Get that number.
Yeah. You should still be able. There's plenty of times where we've called wrong numbers and listed an appointment from it, or got a referral from that person that was the wrong number.
There's been times I called wrong numbers. They hang up on me. I call them back. Oh, we seem to have gotten disconnected.
Right. Here's a pro tip. And if you've been to an event, you would yell too much sauce at that point, because Michael's been rocking that out. But the pro tip if you have a trouble connecting with people, if you call them once, you will add maybe 10% connect rate, which if you have, over 50 leads coming in, 10% can make a big difference. But 10% connect rate will go up if you call everybody that doesn't answer twice. Don't leave a message the first time, call them back immediately from the exact same number, and you will have a increase in your connect rates. I can nearly guarantee that. I have to put an asterisk just in case one person doesn't have an increase in connect rate, but I can verify that every person that I've ever told to do that has had an increase in their contact rate.
Well, just think of the psychology. Yeah.
Yeah, you get a call from the same number twice and they don't leave a message. Like the second time you're like, oh man, it must be important type thing is what I think. If I get a call from a local number twice, like there would be a better chance that I would answer it on the second time. Right. Now, is it 100% chance? No, but I'm saying at least 10% will increase your contact rate. So just anyway, but that's another stage, right? Where the goal of Attract is to get them to connect with you so you can have a conversation, right? And then once you have a conversation or they're replying back to you, it's about getting on and determining timing and motivation. And every step along the way should have something that happens, and you should be able to trigger that. So if you're using an Excel spreadsheet and you break it out into those different categories, and you put everybody into one column that's in that stage and everybody into another column that's in the other stage, and you're just like, an easy way would just be to cut and paste into the next one. If you move someone over into, let's say, the close section, which is, let's say you set an appointment, right? Like there should be a campaign that you build out. And if you don't have a way of producing content, this is just another thing. You have to find a way, right? If it's YouTube, like that's free at least. But you need to have a way of putting out content. So if that is just texting them or emailing them a few different YouTube videos before you go out there, that's going to be better
than nothing.
Right? Yeah. Like you've got to be able, and if that's a manual process, do it manually for a while until you can, justify an expense that is really an investment into your business that will take away a lot of the work, because that will add up as you start doing more business, where that's just more and more things. Michael was talking about it yesterday at the event. He never put signs in the yard because he had one day where he was calling past clients and got like 7 referrals. Just because he was forced to by one of his coaches at the time. He got 7 referrals in that day. Another person that was doing it with him, Chad Goldwasser in Austin, him, Jay, and Chad were doing it all at the same time in the same place. And Chad got 17 in that one day, just calling past clients, getting referrals.
Well, he made his whole business after that about that. I mean, I saw him at an event and he's talking about, that particular process. And there's a way to automate that too, through segmentation of your database.
Right. But doing that kind of thing or recording a video, like if you don't have the time for it, somehow people find a way to redo it. They somehow find time to redo things. Right. And that's another thing that I've just been listening to Michael talk about lately. And that's something that he's been talking about as well. People don't find the time to do it right, but they find the time to redo it. And
my dad had a better saying. He said, if you're going to do a half-assed job, don't do it at all.
Right. Yeah. And just know you're going to do it, and measure twice, cut once, and just make sure that you're doing it the right way. But what he was saying is somehow people don't have time. They always don't have enough time. Yet they're the ones that are putting signs in the yard. Right. He used to pay someone, I think it was $20 or $25 to go put the sign in, and then when it was sold, he would take the sign out. And that would save him sometimes upwards of an hour worth of time. That if you would quantify that and have those hour making calls, since you don't have enough time to do that, but now you just spent $25 to be able to do that. Now you're thinking differently. You're thinking about something that will make a difference, because it's impossible to make $1 million a year doing $10 an hour work. It's just naturally impossible.
Yeah, and I'll just piggyback on that. The way I did it was I paid $50 for every listing when the listing sold. If it didn't sold, he didn't get the money. And so, it ended up being decent money for him. He was a retiree and it was fun for him. But the other side of that is, the other side is how do you think your consumer perceives you, your client, right? If you're out there in your dress clothes pounding a sign in the yard, they're like, what the heck? This guy's the, what's the saying? Wallet maker, candlestick make, jack all trades, master of none kind of thing.
Yep. Right. And like if I were to be in a lot of people's shoes right now, like I would just need to have that breakdown, right? Like, you have people go through, and it's undeniable, buyer, seller, no matter what, you have to figure out process wise and have two core processes, a marketing process and a sales process, that those two working together take someone from a stranger to a raving fan and someone that will send you referrals on a regular basis, right? Like that is the goal. So along the way, you've got to be able to, first off, when someone does raise their hand with some of the direct response or whatever it is that they get into the top of your funnel, you need a process that gets them from
speed of response.
Yep. From whatever they are, wherever they came from, to connected with you, reaching out to you. And then once they do that, you need to actually have a conversation with them. And that can be a variety of different communication methods, but just determine, the goal there is to determine timing and motivation. It is not to set an appointment, which if you can make that one shift in your brain, it will make you hundreds of thousands of dollars over the next few years if you can really implement it. So making the shift from, okay, I understand that I'm not trying to set an appointment. My goal is to determine timing and motivation. And if their timing and motivation is now versus later, then the goal becomes to set an appointment.
I was going to jump in there. Yeah. I mean, we don't want to ignore those opportunities. Yeah.
Exactly. So you want to, you're going to be more excited about those. So you're going to have a really good process for that and a really good script for that. But you just got to make sure that you're doing that. And then the people that aren't right now, you got to have a process again. And it's good to see, if you did that all in one spreadsheet and your nurture bucket was the one that's filling up the quickest, you should be excited about that. And then you should be even more excited about the stuff that you should put at the bottom, which is, what do I do for those people? And then if that's a manual process, do that manually for a while, and then get it to the point where you can automate a lot of that stuff, because it will save you hours and hours of your time weekly to be able to automate that. And then those are the things that you should be focusing on. Not like, hey, let me go to another, like a lot of people go into this like, hey, I'm not clear on what I need to do, so I'm going to jump on like 97 different webinars, and I'm going to go to these trainings in town, and I'm going to go to this weekly training, and then never do anything with any of the information. Like you just got to take action.
Yeah, but don't, and that was my position a few episodes back, and Mike was like, but don't stop learning. And I agree with that. The biggest mistake I ever made was to stop learning. But learn and implement.
You should allow yourself to do that if you are implementing at the same time.
Agreed. Well, I think we kind of ran over here, but again, just to give you guys some action steps: segment your database between buyer and seller. If they're both, make them seller. Segment the stages between the timing, and you want to segment your touches based on how far out they are. And so what we built in is, in the first stage, if they're 12 months out, we're giving them a blog a month. If they're 6 months out, we're giving them a blog every 2 weeks. If they're 3 months out, we're giving them a blog every week. And then on top of that, we built in retargeting, so that when they go back on Facebook, they're seeing you, they're seeing your marketing. If they're at the bottom of the funnel, which means they're in the decision stage, the goal is just retarget them with obviously testimonials from clients. And if you don't have testimonials from clients, you need to start getting them. The way to get them is to ask for them at the closing when they're the happiest. And personally, what I always did was type those suckers up beforehand, so I had statistic based testimonials, right? So, Mike sold my home in 3 days for 98.49% of the asking price after it was listed for 6 months with a prior agent and didn't sell. Those type of testimonials, and those are the things you want to chase them around with after the fact. And if you don't know about retargeting, you don't want to mess with that, you could mail them out, a testimonial. You can do a number of different things.
Right. Yeah. Like I had at the last house I bought, Alex hit me up with once we got the appraisal back, he was like, look at that instant equity, because it appraised for 20 grand more than what what the contract price was. But I wouldn't have thought of that unless he said it to me. Right. So value unarticulated is value unappreciated.
I've never went to a client and said, hey, will you read this? And if you agree, sign it with the testimonial, and had them say, no, I won't sign it.
Right.
Never.
Right. Yeah. They're happy. I mean, you just help them through one of the more stressful processes. And if you do a good job, I mean, they're going to do a lot of things for you. And if you just ask, they're not, I mean, we're still talking about humans. So there's very few people that are going to ask you if they can do that. But if you ask, they will say yes. And
absolutely,
you might have the very, 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 very small amount. But again, I mean, I don't know how many people you asked, but there was a good track record there.
Yeah, so, I probably didn't ask somebody who was unhappy or pissed off. So that's probably why I had such a stellar track record. If they had a bad experience.
Exactly.
They're asking for commission back at the closing table. Probably don't ask for the testimony, and definitely don't ask for a picture.
Right.
Anyway,
it's going to be a very happy picture.
Well, let's wrap it up, brother.
Yep. So I appreciate it. And again, if somebody's having trouble just, or wants some more of a personalized version of that, just let us know. I mean, we're always willing to jump on a call or a screen share or whatever, and just kind of help you walk through some of these things in your business. So just let us know. And as we always say here at Market Maker, it's all about building a business that works harder for you
than you do for it.